I thought about what to preach about, and I was thinking all week, all right, so we've got this wonderful story of Jesus walking on the water, calming the waves, and the disciples are in a boat, and every church kind of has this thing in its architecture about how if you turn it upside down, it's like a boat, and we're a community, and Jesus calms our storms and calms our fears and takes away our anxieties, even when the waves are crashing around us. Then Thursday happened, Wednesday night really. Thursday I was out playing a golf event, a charity golf event, and it dawned on me that I was going to have to talk again about a mass shooting in the United States, and this one with racial overtones. And all week long I had these words in my head from last Sunday's reading from 1 John, which if you were here for the old-timey service, you heard it. It said, the bowels of compassion. You remember that? That stick with you all week? It stuck with me. It's a great band name. The bowels of compassion. And I thought, wow, what an image. What a great image that is. It's certainly better than the image of a boat, and the church is a boat. It's because it talks about the depth and the infinity of compassion that God offers to us and that God offers to all of us. And that stayed with me, and then I said, well, I'm going to have to talk about this event that happened this week in Charleston. And of course, I was led to the Psalm. And it talks about the avenger of blood, and it talks about vengeance, and it talks about making the injustices right, and having a God who hears the cries of the distressed and seeks to meet those cries. And how does it happen? And certainly David, kind of answers this in his plea to Goliath, and he says, you will know that our God is not a God that saves with sword or spear, because he's already won the battle. And that is the gospel truth. Yet it is really hard to grasp it. When our black brothers and sisters are targeted in the way they were this week. And it would be easy to say, it's an isolated incident, there are all these things, mental instability, we can talk about guns, but it's not isolated. And I'd have to really turn my blind eye to a lot of things for me to actually look myself in the mirror and say, that's no big deal. This kind of stuff just happens in society. Well, this is actually the second or third sermon I've had to preach after a mass shooting in the United States. And the first one maybe after a racial tinged shooting, but it still doesn't make me feel any more comfortable to say, God has already won the battle. So I go back to these bowels of compassion, and I want to just dive in and say, where is there compassion enough to forgive, much less to understand? And yet, on Friday, we heard stories of the families of the deceased offering forgiveness to the alleged killer, saying, I forgive you. You have taken something from me that I will never have again. I will never be able to speak to this person again. You have taken that from me, and yet, I forgive you. Out of the bowels of compassion, I find forgiveness for the killer of my mother, the killer of my brother. Somebody emailed me and said, I wish I had faith like that. And I countered, I said, the question is, how do we build a faith like that? Because it's got to be accessible, right? I mean, you remember the shooting at the Amish schoolhouse years ago, where this Amish community went and forgave the shooter. And all these examples come to us of people who do these heinous acts, and the victims of those acts find it in their hearts, find it in the wellspring of compassion to forgive. How do they build a faith like that? I don't quite know. I know that it probably has to do a lot with the Bible, but I also know that it has to do a lot with practice. I imagine that you don't just wake up one day with the willingness to forgive a killer. I imagine that in some degree it's a gift of the Spirit that might just happen upon you like a dove lighting on your shoulder. But I also think that it's rooted in everyday practices and our own wells of compassion. How often do we tap into them? Or are we quick to condemn? What is our daily practice? Is our daily practice one of compassion or one of condemnation? If it's one more than the other, we might need to change that equation around. Daily practice. Practice compassion. And how do we do that? The word compassion means to suffer with. How can we possibly suffer with someone who's suffering we can't know, we can't access? Matter of fact, the best manager of baseball, Buck Showalter, was asked after the Baltimore uprising, he said, "What advice would you have for young black men in Baltimore?" And Buck Showalter simply said, "I have nothing to say of that. There's no way that I can experience what they've experienced. I can't know what they know. I can't walk in their shoes, so how could I give them any kind of advice?" That makes a lot of sense to me. At the same time, it still feels like yelling into an abyss. Like slamming our heads up against the wall and there is no relief. What can we do? You know, and I think about it, I said, what am I going to say? What can I say about this that I haven't said before? I mean, I'm grateful that we have a community that can talk about race openly. I'm grateful for that. I'm grateful for your patience and your willingness to go in that conversation with me. And I said, well, you know, am I going to solve racism with this sermon? Is that the goal here? I hope not, because I'll probably fail miserably. But what if the goal is this? What if the goal is to offer to you a chance to take a step towards racial reconciliation? Maybe that could be our goal for the morning, right? And let me offer you this. Let me offer you this. Next Saturday, June 27th, from 12 o'clock noon until 7 p.m. over at Browns Wood Ballpark, not too far away from here, not too far away from Campers. The Asbury Broadneck United Methodist Church, an historically African-American church just on the other side of Route 50. Pastor Stephen Tillett is the guy there. They're having a community day. It's kind of like their parish picnic. And they're going to be selling things. There's going to be arts and crafts. There's going to be food. There's going to be oral histories. Mike Wynn, the head of our history committee, has purchased a booth for St. Margaret's to inhabit. We're going to set that booth up in the morning. We're going to be there for most of the day. And what I want us to do is I want us to be a supportive presence to their community. More so now than before 9 people were killed because of their race. To be a supportive presence and listen to their stories. Can we do that? Can we go visit a church other than our own? Can we go be with those people who are just like us and listen to their stories? Can we go and learn about our shared history with Asbury Broadneck? Can we go, instead of saying, hey, let us tell you about St. Margaret's, say, tell me your story. Share with me. What do I need to know? I hope we can. Because when we do that, we start a relationship. And when Veronica gets to know somebody, when Sarah gets to know somebody, when Khaki gets to know somebody over at Asbury Broadneck, it becomes much less of a those people or that church. It becomes a us rather than a them. I had the great opportunity to assistant coach my daughter's soccer team this year. And I was really grateful that the team was probably more ethnically diverse than other soccer teams that she's played on. And one of the other assistant coaches was an African-American woman who I got to know pretty well through the long and arduous season that we endured. And at the last game, I was talking to her a little bit about, you know, St. Margaret's and what we do, and she said, yeah, I should get to church more often. And I've heard that line before. She said, I said, where do you go? She said, Asbury Broadway. I said, oh yeah, Pastor Tillett. I've had lunch with him a few times, good guy. She said, yeah, I like it a lot. And I told her, I said, we're trying to build relationships with your church, one person at a time. She said, well, you're off to a good start with me. So I know Shonda now. And I don't know if she's going to be a community day or not, but you might meet her there. You might meet somebody else. You might meet other leaders of that congregation. But what happens when you meet them is you learn about them, and you listen to them. And then when Pastor Tillett comes and preaches from this pulpit someday, he's not just, oh, the guy over at Asbury Broadway. He's Stephen. He's an Air Force chaplain. But he's also a minister at a church with which we have a relationship. And that's how it's going to work. One person, one community at a time. That's the hope that I pin myself on. That one person at a time, we can break down barriers, we can understand our own privileges as white Americans, and we can listen and learn. I don't know to what depths one has to reach to forgive, how far down into the bowels of compassion you have to reach. But I know that what I can do is listen to what that feels like. I can listen to what feelings that person goes through. And that is the hope to which God calls us today. To be a church that hears. To be a church that learns. To be a church in relationship with those around us. Amen.